Guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, I wouldn't pay my fiance's mother $5,000, so she ruined my life. Now I'm homeless. This story is extremely hard for me to tell because I'm still feeling the effects of it. However, I feel like I need to, because this story features the most entitled parent I have ever met in my entire life. This is the story of how my life has been ruined because, like the title states, I refused to pay my fiance's mother $5,000. It started out simple enough. In August of 2019, when my fiance and I were dating my parents, who I was staying with at the time, to care for my stepmother after a surgery, another story for this subreddit in itself, wanted me to leave because they couldn't have sex as often as they wished. They told me this in a very abrupt manner and expected me to leave fairly quickly, giving me no time to prepare. My fiance kindly asked his mother, who he was staying with, if I could live with them long enough for us to get an apartment together. He stressed to her that it would be difficult for us to get an apartment ourselves just starting out, and that while we could cover all the monetary expenses, we would still most likely need a cosigner. She promised both me and him that if we couldn't qualify for an apartment by ourselves, she would cosign for us. So I moved from Illinois to Florida. Within a week of me being in the house, fiance's mother made our lives a living hell. Despite me landing a job within a week and having to work late nights for said job, she would come into the living room each morning at varying, stupidly early hours to tell us we needed to do something productive. While she goes back to bed to sleep until 9 a.m., she would complain that we weren't cleaning the dishes we had used to make a meal that we had just made and were still eating. She would gaslight and pick petty fights with my fiancé, then play the victim like a true narcissist. It got so bad that, a few weeks in, we decided to rent a hotel room for the weekend just to get away from her and have some alone time. We had our apartment picked out anyway. All we'd need to do when we got back was sign some paperwork and we'd be away from her, right? Wrong. After the weekend, fiance's mother drove us back to her house. On the drive back, she sprung something on me. She wanted us to pay her $5,000. For context, my fiancé was going to be receiving a $9,000 medical settlement a few months from that point. Before he met me, he had told his mother that, if he was still single, he would give her $5,000 towards a trailer that they would both own and live in together. Since my spouse and I were dating and very serious at the time, this was extremely confusing that she would demand this. My fiancé tried to explain to her that he had only promised to give her money if he was single. She was having none of it and attempted to gaslight him about it. When that didn't work, she turned to me and requested that I pay her the $5,000. I only had about $5,000 in my bank account at the time, so I couldn't do that and pay to rent an apartment at the same time. When she realized she couldn't squeeze blood from a stone, my fiancé's mother finally declared, well, I guess you don't have a cosigner then. With my fiancé being on SSI due to injuries that left him disabled, and he making minimum wage, her refusing to cosign on an apartment essentially left us without any housing options. Florida requires applicants to make 3 times the price of the rent on any given place, and rent in our area is very high. Finding a roommate situation that accepts couples is nigh on impossible, and renting houses were out, as well, once again due to not having enough income. My fiancé's mother's behavior worsened. With nowhere to go, we jumped ship and moved to a local hotel. But only 3 months of this drained our finances. We then couch-surfed with some of my fiancé's acquaintances, but a lot of them were not good people and we were used and stolen from several times. We ended up sleeping in the deep freezer of an abandoned Hooters until the building was almost torn down on us by construction workers one day. After that, fiancé's mother bought us a tent. How nice of her. And we ended up living in the woods while I tried to hold down my job. We've been homeless on and off for 2 years now. I've been sexually assaulted twice because being homeless has put us in dangerous and unsafe situations. I've witnessed someone almost shoot my spouse. Fiancé's mother didn't care. It even seemed like she enjoyed watching us suffer. Finally, in early 2020, when we were practically begging on our knees, fiancé's mother co-signed on an apartment, a 2-bedroom model we couldn't afford, but she insisted it was that or nothing. But after everything was finalized, she told us we couldn't have roommates. We had to try and keep ourselves afloat during the pandemic, something that ruined my finances more than they already were. When our lease ended in April, Fiance's mom insisted she fulfilled her promise, so she has no obligation to help us, even if that action consigned us to the streets again. We're homeless again now, and she continues to lie about us to the rest of the family, saying we ruined the apartment, which we left in perfect condition, and saying that is the reason she won't co-sign for us again. To tie up this story, I found out recently that refusing to co-sign and watching our finances dwindle was very much intentional on the mother's part. During the weekend, my fiancé and I went to the hotel for our weekend escape. His mother went to a family get-together. We weren't invited to this event. My fiancé has DID in addition to his physical limitations, and the rest of his family ostracizes him because he is crazy. He's a DID system who has well-behaved alters who all work well together, so this is utterly ridiculous, but they've treated him this way his whole life. During the family event, someone joked that I probably had more money than my fiancé's mother. The woman gets $5,000 a month due to a combination of retirement pension and money she inherited from her late husband. I doubt it. According to a family member, she calmly said in response, "Let's see how much money that fag has when I'm done with her." Next one is titled, "Neighbors want us to be inconvenienced so that they can park their car in front of our house." My house is on a busy main road with a lot of traffic throughout the day. There is a local bus stop literally opposite our gate, and buses run every 10 to 15 minutes. All in all, traffic is always very high. The way that our plot is built, there is a strip running along our wall adjoining the road that technically comes within our property lines. Due to construction regulations or something, there is nothing on that patch. It runs along the length of our compound wall and the road. Just beside our house is a small lane, the width of one small car and a bike. There are about 5 to 6 houses in that lane, with only one of them owning a car. It's my aunt, and she rarely takes her car out. It's parked inside her house compound 90% of the time. There is an electric pole right at the entrance of the street. It's a huge headache for anyone to come into or drive into the street because of that. On occasions that my aunt needs to use her car for a few days in a row, she prefers to park just outside my house. No problem, we have an arrangement, and any time there's an inconvenience due to traffic, my uncle, aunt's husband, me or someone can move the car. Trouble started about a couple of months ago. One of our neighbor has a house at the very end of the street. Their compound doesn't have enough space for a car. A relative of theirs has been staying with them. They own a small hatchback, which they started parking outside our house. At nights, it's not an issue, but my father and uncle both often need to travel for work and often need to leave early in the morning. We have 2 cars, one a large SUV, and the other is a bit smaller, but still sizable. Due to the heavy main road traffic, it's nearly damn impossible to maneuver the cars out if there is vehicle parked outside our house. You can see where this is going. My father, uncle, and I have asked them multiple times not to park there or to move their car in the mornings so that we may go about our business. They listen for a couple of days, and voila, a few days later, the car is again parked outside our house. We ended having a huge argument with them, and now they have started to park their car in the small street. It has begun to hamper the people living in the street, as the vehicle completely jams the street. Anyone coming in or out of the street has a lot of trouble. A couple of days ago, they scratched the side of their car against electric pole while backing it out of the street. They again parked it outside. Today morning, my father had to wait for half an hour to get his car out. Not a very patient man in the best of situations, he blasted off at our neighbor. They in turn blame us for the scratch and are demanding that we pay for the damages as we don't allow them to park outside and hence indirectly cause the damage to the car. My father was left speechless at their audacity and pretty told them to duck off. Those guys are a real nuisance for sure. Next one is titled, "Elderly Man Wants a Refund Because I Told Him That He Can't Ride His Bicycle in Our Drive-Thru." Cast, me. Entitled Man, EM, and Amazing Manager AM. So this took place back in 2019. I was working at a popular food chain in Texas. If you know, then you know. It was about 4:30 a.m. and I was getting the coffee ready for the morning rush at 6 a.m. It was only me and AM on the clock. We did have our maintenance guy working as well. As I'm in the back washing a few dishes and my AM doing inventory, it is just quiet. I finish doing the dishes and walk back up to the front to bring the tea canisters so I can start the tea. Our maintenance man then tells me that there is an elderly white man sitting at the window in our drive-through sitting on a bicycle. Weird, I don't remember taking any orders. So I thank the guy and go unlock the door. This is how the interaction went. Me: "Hi sir, how can I help?" EM: "I ordered in the drive-through. You should have my order." Me: "I'm sorry sir, I must have not heard you. What was your order again?" EM: "I want a cheeseburger and fries." Me: "All right sir, that will be $5.40. The EM hands me his card and I give him his card back, closing the window. I go to the back to get my manager, so she can cook the food. I can only put fries and other food in the fryers as no one taught me the grill. As I tell her that we had an order, I tell my AM that the guy is on a bicycle, and that was the reason why we both didn't hear any orders come through. My AM then tells me that we can serve him this time, but next time he needs to come in a car or come into the lobby. I nod and go relay the message to my customer. Me: "Hi sir, so I spoke to my manager, and she told me that we can serve you tonight, but next time please come in a car or come in the dining hall as it is." The EM cuts me off. EM: "So you're discriminating against me." I just stared at him in shock with my mouth open. Me: "No sir, it's just because it's part of our policies, and it's also so you don't get hurt if a car were to come up. We just want to protect you." The EM continues to say that I'm discriminating against him. Keep in mind he's an elderly white man who is in his early 60s maybe. Before I can speak again, the man speaks up. EM: "I want a refund. I don't want to eat here anymore, and I'm going to write a review about you and how you discriminated against me." I sigh and go tell my manager what happened. The manager goes and issues a refund. I don't hear what they are talking about as I'm trying to finish up getting items stocked up. Soon after 5 minutes go by, my manager turns to me and just laughs. Now, at this point, I'm curious about what they were talking about. Me: "What did he say?" AM: "He called you a white racist and said that he was never coming back here again." My jaw just dropped as I was shocked that I was called a white racist. Me: "I'm sorry, what?" "All I did was relay the message you told me to tell him." I then started laughing, as did my manager, who also found this funny. To this day, I still haven't seen the review from this man. Luckily, I no longer work for this company, but man, this was the first ever EP I have ever interacted with, and this is the story I will forever remember. Last one is titled, Karen Wants a Cuppa. Until last year, I worked on the ticket desk of a museum. So, I was the first person people saw and the person who said goodbye to them as they left. September last year, a couple of ladies came in and purchased tickets at around 3 p.m. They asked if the museum had a cafe. I answered yes, it does, but please remember it closes at 4:30 p.m., half an hour before the rest of the museum does. One of the ladies said, "Oh yes, that's fine." The other just pulled his face of dissatisfaction. That's the only way I can put it. Anyway, they went off on their museum ramble. At 4:15 p.m., I do a tannoy announcement advising that the museum is open for another 4 to 5 minutes and the cafe will be closing at 4:30 p.m. The reason the cafe closes half an hour before is to allow people drinking up time. I mean, it would be unfair if someone walked in there at 4:55 p.m., ordered hot drinks, and 5 minutes later they were told the museum's closing and they need to leave. Anyway, we get to 4:55 and I do the 5-minute announcement that asks people to start making their way toward their exit, right past my desk, and a few minutes later dissatisfied Karen comes marching towards me with her friend looking sheepish in her wake. I'm not happy that the cafe closes half an hour before the rest of this place. I want a cup of tea now. Why have you closed it? To be honest, I thought it was an odd thing to complain about, seeing as we are in a city center full of cafes, restaurants, and bars, all of which are really close by and actually much better. But I stood and calmly tried to explain that the reason we do it is to allow people enough time to finish the drinks they purchase without having to rush because the museum closes at 5. At 5 p.m., we have to clear all visitors out quickly whilst we have the staff there to check everywhere is clear. It's also about having time to clean the cafe before closing to maintain hygiene. I don't see why I would have to rush my drink if I bought it at 5. You can clear the rest of the building, and there must be some other staff here who can just wait whilst I finish. I again explained that the staff in the building must check that it is cleared of all visitors, and then they leave because they stop being paid at 5. The only people remaining are the security guards, who then go around locking up, which takes them a considerable amount of time. So there wouldn't be anyone who could just wait for her to finish, clear up her crockery, clean her table, and sweep the area. Well, someone like you would just have to wait for me. You've been paid a day's wages. You can afford to wait 15 or 20 minutes so I can have a drink. And then she continued to rant about the injustice of us closing our cafe earlier than the rest of the building, and the fact that all I had offered were excuses rather than solutions to her problem. The whole time her friend just looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her, and I had by this time lost my crap and could feel myself start to puff with indignation. I was already taller than tea-loving Karen, but I stood up straighter, clearly agitated. Visitors were filing past her, leaving, giving us shifty looks because I looked so annoyed, and Karen was on the verge of spitting feathers. My radio was pinging with colleagues saying their areas were free of visitors. A couple of colleagues had already left, and I was left to deal with this miserable witch who was complaining because she couldn't have a cuppa. I'm sorry, but don't know what you want me to say or what resolution you would like me to offer. I just work in the front desk. I don't have a say in what closes and when. I just know the reasons why. I also don't see why I should have to wait for you to finish a cup of tea without being paid. The cafe closes at 4:30 p.m. to allow people a comfortable amount of time to finish before they have to leave. It also allows us time to clean the tables. I told you that fact when you came in. If you have now decided that you would like a cup of tea, there are several cafes outside of the museum within close proximity. Then I just stared at her. I knew I'd already been rude, and I couldn't trust myself to say anything else. The friend simply said, "You are quite right, my dear. It makes perfect sense why the cafe closes." Then she gently tugged on dissatisfied Karen's arm to try and get her to move, and it seemed to dawn on the woman that she looked like a completely mental cow. Then our security guard, who I later found out had watched the whole exchange and is burly and scary and not someone you'd argue with, suddenly boomed out, "Come on, ladies, it's 5:05. This young lady finished work 5 minutes ago, and she's got a bus to catch. As much as you love her company, you're going to have to go now, I'm afraid. Not unless you want to spend the night locked in the dungeon." Aha! Then he basically pushed them out of the door. Karen obviously decided she already looked mental, so she may as well face it out, and just started screeching to her friend, "Well, I just don't think this is good enough. I'm thirsty now." Thanks for listening.